Welcome to Automotive EV. My name is Peter Wooding and thank you for joining us. I'm going to welcome three senior executives for our leaders session for today, which we're looking at the customer experience. The first is Rawdon Glover from Jaguar Land Rover, Matthias Wellers from AVL, and Manuel Fernandes from Tritium.
Right.
So without further ado, Rawdon will be delivering the first presentation. So thank you, Rawdon, for joining us. And the screen, if we want to call it that rather than stage, is now all yours.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Peter. I'll just bring my screen up for everybody here. So thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really just keen to talk a little bit about customer expectations. And I guess it's probably unrealistic to think that we're going to fix all of the associated issues that customers can have with, for example, things like the UK EV infrastructure. But as an OEM, where we are today, most of our energy really is put into making sure that we can provide better information, more accurate information, and more timely information to ensure that we not only enhance their ownership experience, but also perhaps enhance the decision making for customers when they're considering either an EV, a PHEV, or an ICE vehicle for that matter. So that's I guess really some of the type of information I'm going to talk to. It's useful just to ground ourselves in terms of where we are for the UK. This is information. The information you see at the bottom there is the quarter to date, if you like, looking at the percentages, and electrified now accounts for just under 20%, and it's quickly catching up diesel in terms of its penetration, and certainly the early September figures that's continuing. Really pleased to say iPace, our first premium electric BEV, continues to perform well and is the #1 premium selling vehicle. And but what you can also see is, for everybody, BEV sales are increasing, irrespective of clearly some of the COVID challenges that we've had in this period. If you're wondering what other British is, it's the rather strange classification from the SMMT. It's actually where they put Tesla and one or two other sort of odds and sods. So really that big increase is Tesla, and particularly the Model 3 that we see coming through there. So I guess key messages here is clearly it's becoming of increasing importance if you put hybrids and EV together. And we do certainly see them living together, and clearly registrations all increasing. From our side, our portfolio will increase. So obviously we, as I've mentioned, we went into this whole sector with the iPace a couple of years ago. We introduced the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport PHEVs pretty quickly off the back of that. 4 more PHEVs have been released recently, and we've got more to come, which we'll be announcing in the next few months. So for us, we definitely see a real blend of having full BEV, PHEV certainly for the medium term, and also for the medium term there is definitely a place for ICE vehicles, whether that's petrol or diesel. In terms of going back to the exam question, if you like, in terms of customer expectations, I gave a kind of a really simplified customer journey here in terms of how customers are thinking about EVs. So when they're at home, when they're actually in our retail environment, what happens in the car, and actually then what happens in the ownership experience post purchase. And I'll just talk very briefly really about some of those, each of those 4 stages, each of those in turn, to give you a flavour of the sort of thing we're thinking about. So I think firstly at home, the most important thing for us as an OEM, particularly an OEM that has a choice of powertrains, is that we guide customers to ensure they're making the powertrain choice that best suits them and best suits their duty cycle. So whether that's something like an online calculator they can use at home, which will predict their running costs and how their range will be impacted by their duty cycle, all the way through to making sure that customers kind of understand everything about the different types of technology that we offer, and really just enhancing our capability on our, and this is all information found on our website, to really beef up all of those questions that customers are asking, as well as the use of chatbots to make sure that whether somebody's doing it in the middle of the night or when they're at work, we can provide information pretty much 24/7. Really a part of that, making sure that the customers have all of the information to hand. And certainly, as our retailers will attest, what we find with EV customers particularly, or EV prospects, is they are, by the time they get into the retail environment, they are extremely knowledgeable, which is really the next point. We need to make sure that that information is then seamless. So as and when a customer comes across the threshold into retail environment, we need to make sure that, again, it doesn't feel like they're getting different information or conflicting information, as well as then actually what we need to start bringing alive is what is that charging environment looking like. So one of our more recent observations is, unless you absolutely know, for example, that the I-Pace is an electric car, or that, for example, a Range Rover, it might be very difficult to, well, you can't tell the plug-in hybrid apart from the ICE engine particularly easily. So actually the use of wall box charging point of sale material and examples of what a wall box looks like, not only to make sure the customers understand which vehicles are electrified, but also to bring alive that ownership experience in a way that I think certainly previously we didn't feel we did particularly well. A lot of information, clearly, as with any car purchase, but there's obviously massive other dimensions as far as EVs are concerned. We need to educate around running costs. What factors, whether it's speed of driving, type of driving, city or countryside, how that affects the range. Our salespeople need to be really au fait about financial incentives, as well as making sure that they can demonstrate how actually they get wallbox installed, and really we like to make sure that anybody selling one of our, particularly the electric products, it's really essential that they've really lived with an EV. I think until you can drive one and you can get an idea of what a dynamic driving experience it is, but until you've lived with on, charged it at home, used public charging, and all of those other aspects of it, I think it's very difficult to really put yourselves in customers' shoes. So that's something we also work on hard to ensure that when a customer is in the retailer, they get a really holistic view as to what the ownership experience is like. Again, going back to my overarching point, to make sure that when they choose an EV, that an EV is right for them, and they shouldn't perhaps, maybe they should be in a PHEV, maybe they should be an ICE for the time being. And that's all part of the role that we see the retailers absolutely need to play. Now, in terms of in the car, we use increasingly that data to try and improve the ownership experience, whether that's giving them better information about range calculation, battery management algorithms. We absolutely need to give customers better information about state of charge in terms of charge points, because again, this is probably one of the particular pain points where it looks like a charge point is not in use and is available. If we signpost, or if we take a customer to that point, only to find out that it is either in use or actually not able to be used, clearly that's a very, very disappointing and poor customer experience, and one that you can't really rely on. So providing better information in the car, and really doing that. I mean, obviously most of customers use ZapNav. For our point of view, we really should be providing this and serving this information up in an integrated way through the HMI, in order that can then link into SatNav and journey planning in a much more effective way. So that's one of the next areas where we're investing a lot of time and energy to make sure that that information is absolutely stored in our system rather than in a third-party app. Otherwise, it's very difficult to connect it to obviously things like SatNav. We're getting a lot more information now in. I think at the turn of the year, we probably had about 400 data points, which were actually taking live information about the state of health of the charging infrastructure. That's now up to 3,000, and we need to continue to increase that exponentially until it covers a lot more of the charging network that's out there. And then really, when we get into sort of whether post-ownership or the ownership phase, there's a real responsibility for us to help our customers, whether it's managing their range, managing their driving more efficiently, helping them with their selection of energy provider, So whether it's exploring, EV tariffs for customers, that is another area for us, which is I think an area of opportunity to provide a more holistic package, not only the wall box installation, the vehicle, etc., but also energy provision. But we've not really landed that one yet. I think it's a very dynamic space in terms of making sure that not only are we offering a customer a green tariff, but also a tariff that best suits their their ability to get good value for money as well. So that's something we're working on. Then in terms of certainly payment is another area here. So ease of payment, I think, is definitely a customer expectation and a current pain point where, depending on which providers you sign up to, potentially having multiple different accounts, really, payment aggregation is definitely an area of opportunity for us and something we're working on. And we think if we can get to the point where probably 3/4 of the network are part of an aggregated network system, we think that really is then the point where we're taking the pain point away from a customer. So that again is another area where we're putting in a lot of energy to make sure that we're improving the customer experience. Similarly, a lot of these customers are very, very tech savvy. So probably no surprise that our software over-the-air updates is the I-Pacer is the vehicle that we really premiered that capability on, and we continue to provide updates to vehicles to improve the vehicle performance throughout its life, whether that's battery management, etc., or any other part of the EV journey. So I think that's those, in terms of the time available, start to get a picture of some of the areas of opportunity for us and where we see customer expectations moving in terms of making the choices and owning an EV. I think as a slight aside, we tend to be very, very focused as an industry at the moment on the new car side of purchases. So currently, obviously in the UK, we're benefiting from some definite benefit-in-kind benefits around EV vehicles, which is definitely driving interest from the fleet sector, which is great. But actually, what are the incentives or what are the reasons why you would buy a used premium BEV vehicle is a little bit of an answered question. And again, anybody that's involved with car retailing will know that residual values will be fundamental to the affordability of the vehicle and the accessibility of the vehicle. So making sure that there is a strong used market and a strong incentive to buy the second ownership of the vehicle is one of the other key areas that is not necessarily fitting directly into the customer expectations in terms of what a customer would say to us, but certainly making sure that it isn't an inhibitor in terms of its affordability is clearly a key point for us to work on. And that's, I think, particularly key in the premium BEV segment, not so much in the volume BEV segment, as far as I can see. So that was pretty much my summary today. Tried to be short and sweet, and I think I'm now handing over to Matthias. That's right. Okay, so if I unshare my screen, hopefully that works smoothly.
Shared already. Hello. Yeah. Thank you for the invitation, the possibility to speak. Do you see my screen?
Yes, you may want to enlarge. That's it.
Yes,
thank you.
Enlarge as well. Yeah, thank you very much to speak. Thank you, Peter. It's brilliant to have an OEM here. I'm coming from a supplier, engineering supplier, and I look a little bit out the box because we are usually hired to do technology development and bring stuff into serious production. And perhaps some of you remember before the coronavirus, we had always this case, connected, autonomous, sharing, electric. And this was already, for me at least, difficult enough to understand. But we all know that. We went to a lot of conferences and there were always the word smart transportation, smart mobility, data protection, revolutionize mobility in society, connected autonomous vehicles, zero impact, e-fuels and whatever. And we discussed in a lot of conferences, and honestly, sometimes people use these words and I missed the meaning. And then that happened. Coronavirus, we all woke up. And we all struggle with this still. Believe me, it's by far not over. But let's look a little bit underneath again. And you know what happened? And not only in this conference, everywhere where I go, you know, the long sentences are gone. The other thing is we concentrate much more now. Sharing and connected fell a little bit off. Connected, not in that we are not connected, but people understand that connected might be not done by the automotive industry, but by other industries. And the other thing happened, everybody looks at the moment at electric. And let's look a little bit at share price. Sorry to say, this is not Tata or Jaguar Land Rover, this year is Tesla. And everybody looks at it and thinks, why is Tesla so expensive? Tesla is more worth now that I think Ford and GM combined. Let's see if it stays this way. The other topic was autonomous. And I can only say one thing with autonomous, it's complicated. And another thing is test, test, test. There will be much more work to be done. What is true about the automotive industry? And I know it's 80 years ago, Battle of Britain, but this vehicle was brilliant. Why? It has all the capability. It had all the capability, and the price was right. Nowadays, we look much more in cities, countryside, and rest of the world. And I don't have to tell you that in the UK, everybody looks always to London, but the highest income is as well in London. In the countryside, it's middle. In the rest of the world, it's a little bit lower. What else is true is in the cities, we only look for local emissions. We have to bring the local emissions down. In the countryside, we see as well that Renewable Energy Directive RED II is recognized. 30% of the energy should be renewable. And it is important to keep the right to drive. In countryside, it's not so the local emissions, but the people want to buy cars and drive cars, which they are still allowed to drive. And in the rest of the world, and this is a slide of India, and you see their 2040 energy mix, 50% in 2040 will still be done by coal. We can argue about it, but I think it's all about affordability. And we have to see, especially companies like Jaguar Land Rover, which we have on the panel, has to serve all these markets, which is very difficult. When we look further a little bit, how many cars per household do we have? In London, and here you see a distribution of 2011, 2012, around 70% of households have access to a car. The countryside, it's higher. It's 80%. In the rest of the world, it's 20%. And what could be true now is that we see in cities perhaps a decline of individual traffic, in the countryside a replacement, and in the rest of the world a big growth of transportation, individual transportation. And perhaps it could be true that we look in cities for full electric, in countryside part electric, and in the rest of the world better combustion processes. And believe me, when you see in India 50% of the electricity is done by coal, I very much doubt that a battery electric vehicle is so much better than a proper combustion engine. We will see, and yes, we had coronavirus, but I think in the cities we will see a quick turnaround growth of shared services. But in the countryside, I think the pressure of legislation will be the major driver. And we have not to forget that coronavirus might be over for some of us, or we think it's over. I think it's by far not over for the automotive industry, and we will see many more people again not wanting to share perhaps their vehicles. And in the rest of the world, we have to bring the CO2 down because there it is most precious. And I tell you as well, It doesn't matter if you burn CO2 in London or in China or India, or produce CO2 and burn coal, it will hit us all. And we have to see that we do it globally and reduce. And I haven't talked even about fuel cells yet or value creation, because we should not as well forget that a lot of value is done in the UK by producing engines. So what will be, what is, and what shall we do? It's always the same question. What will be is, imagine all energy is CO2 free, and then I would say, yes, electric drive, don't produce anything. But what is batteries are not for free. Materials and energy is necessary to build them, and the energy in the batteries is high, and the materials are not cheap. And let's hope that we do not get into a battery gate. We had the diesel gate. It could be as well that we do something wrong with batteries. And when that comes then out, if we do something wrong, that would be a disaster. So what shall we do? And this is my personal thinking. We have to do what is best now and in the next 10 years, or how long it ever takes. Every car drives the first mile. That use plug-in hybrids, because the first 20, 30, 40 miles are the miles all cars drive. If these miles are done full electric, we would really reduce perhaps CO2 with a not too large battery and not a too large additional cost. And we could get even into that plug-in hybrids are still allowed into cities when the battery is full when you get in, and the battery is as much charged that you can do your journey in the cities CO2 free. Outside the cities, when you have longer travels, a diesel engine, and nobody likes it, I know, but we build here in the UK as well quite heavy vehicles. A diesel engine might still be the best choice when we look at CO2. And with the new emissions and after treatment regulations, I do think there is a way forward. And it's always the same. Do not favor only one technology. Keep your hands in all technologies, because as Rawdon said, you have to make the right decision for the right user. Thank you very much. That was me.
Thank you, Matthias. It's the stage is yours now.
Now from here, can you see
Yes.
my presentation now? Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
So, yes, so thank you, first of all, for the invites and for being able to present and being able to address some expectations on this side, on the infrastructure side. And I will try to give a bit of what we see that is that we believe that the customers expect. So for those that don't know Tritium, because I believe now it's becoming more known, but we were a very small company a few years back. I can tell you when I joined 6 years ago, there were 15 employees and I was the 15th worldwide. But we've grown into become a technology leader in terms of charging and DC charging mainly, and then located around the world, deploying a good number of support to the growth of e-mobility. So that's where we came from Brisbane in Australia to Europe, to US, to the rest of the world, trying as best as possible to do it. Now, in terms of network and infrastructure, that is the area that we are focused, area that we work, we see that indeed started some years ago, focused and pushed by the utilities, but in between the market has really expanded, and the charging expands itself also from lower power to higher power, and depending on the focus of the segment of the market that is looking at it, then the interest is different. So we see cases of automotive industry to join into a joint venture, creating Ionity to create this large network. We see utilities that started by low power, slow charging, also moving to high power. Oil and gas more recently, finally, many were saying, where are they? Are they looking at it or not? And also they are starting. But this is a business, and we see private equity and private company also being very successful. So the market is definitely splitting into different segmentations, each one of them trying to support the move into e-mobility with their own background interest and opportunity. So we see that indeed the industry has been splitting itself around e-mobility between public and private, and between those two large segments, because then the approach towards charging it is different. There's these areas that are really, and companies that are focusing on it within the industry, and each one of them to support as best as possible the ones involved in their own segment. So on the private side, providing charging at work will allow our employees to come to work with electric, contributing also to a more e-mobility world. Then, of course, the transit, heavy vehicle, and even moving to larger vessels becoming electric, that will contribute severely and highly to the depollution of the world. On the public side, also the contribution of those that are already the players in the market and the ones that have a certain level of responsibility towards this contribution. Some faster than others, of course, but we see that all of them have opened the interest and all of them are now working towards e-mobility. So the public side, we see it becoming now what we call maybe a bit of a contest. Utilities started a few years back. I have been working in the industry for the last 10 years. Then we saw CPOs coming into the market. And when I say CPOs, I mean more private companies that look themselves as charge point operators. And in between, OEMs and oil and gas also have started to get their space within it. And we try as best as possible to create solutions that provide a better experience from beginning to end and for all of them. And even though plug and charge, it's now a lot on discussions and be seen as attached to the OEMs, I will challenge today that idea that plug and charge comes exactly to provide a better experience to the driver. Why? One of the critical points that we see, it's how we can, drive around the world, plug into a charger, secure that then we get recognized, get what we need, that is the refilling with energy to our vehicle, but at the same end, at the other side, we are utilizing a service provided by someone, and of course, we need to, on that authentication, certification, secure that we also proceed with the respective payment. So Tritium has been working on it for the last 5 years, and it's within the networks that at the moment, or the charger infrastructure providers that at the moment has enabled it and has it already as fully active. Now, within this, there are a few scopes to get there. So we had to, work together with the vehicle manufacturers to secure that we can read them. There's a special communication between chargers and vehicles. So we are working with the industry, with the OEM industry, to secure that we can read the vehicle to the point that we can recognize their authentication and their identification, to then be able to pass that certificate to the cloud, to whoever will be the one then verifying then the certificate coming from the vehicle. And why we see this as the next good experience and the potential future experience towards a better move into e-mobility is that will allow, maybe the drop of all the cards, key rings, RFIDs, apps, and so on. So at the end of the day, for us to drive to a country, we can choose to have plenty of different, RFID cards. Why? So that we in each network secure that we are, plugging, recognizing, charging, having the most efficient. Because to the driver's side, and I am a driver, we try to make it as efficient as possible. Same way as when we drove in the past old cars, we look to the prices and say, no, I don't go there. I go 5 kilometers away because it will be a bit more cost efficient for me to refuel my vehicle. So at the moment, plenty of networks are definitely being created, but the plug and charge comes in an opportunity to drop all these cards and provide another different way and solution to be recognized. Now, this brings, of course, a streamlined membership, different type of experience, allows also the car to be in control, allows a much better improved data security, and a potential enabling of when we do larger travel. Now, a big question is, who is then fighting to get the best plug and charge experience, and who are the ones interested to become those? And the market clearly looks to the OEMs as the ones maybe more make utilization of plug and charge. So we see tech players already looking at it through apps and ways of paying, because they are also, at the end of the day, a large number of our day-to-day way of payment. So we see Apple Pay, Google Pay, and other methods like that becoming more common than even using our own, cards, our credit cards, and so on, when we digitally do our purchases. So they are clearly also looking to the space and trying to understand if they have an opportunity. As also the utilities and CPOs are looking at it, because if this moves somewhere else, they, being the leaders, the ones bringing the networks, creating the networks, are somehow being losing the space. But plug and charge is there also for them. So we have a network connected to drives where we recognize the car MAC address, that we can allow then that MAC address to be recognized within the backend system against the customer credit. So for the customer not to have plug in and tap his authentication, but automatically by plugging his car being recognized within the utility. So the plug and charge experience and the plug and charge technology, like that, or interface, comes to serve all those that are interested to create a better experience to the drivers. So it's not just in one or the other segment. So it's being enabled in a way capable of supporting all types of players to be able to gain their space based on their own benefits and their own advantages to the final driver experience. And we as infrastructure, what we try to do on the part that we developed in advance to the market and publish a white paper of how to replicate, the plug and charge on a charger within the OCPP protocol. We made it in advance. We published it publicly to help others get there, in order to secure that driver experience and the e-mobility experience gets adopted faster, better, sooner, and definitely with a much better feel than the old generation of vehicles in the past. So this is what I wanted to share today with you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Interesting presentations across the board, and really do help with, I would call it, setting the scene for someone who is now in that position, that they're looking to actually go at least to plug-in hybrid or full EV. If we go back to the initial stages, and this is really more for you, Rawdon. You mentioned about making sure that the visit to the retailer sort of matched very much their search online. Do you ever see people within your network actually making the full decision online and buying it online?
We do. We have the capability to buy online. We do sell iPaces online. But the vast majority of all our vehicles, to be honest, whether it's EV or PHEV or ICE vehicles, are bought in retailer. I mean, clearly, most of the research is done pretty much exclusively online. But no, it's not as if EV customers are just buying online. They don't show. I don't think they show any greater propensity to buy online for us at the moment than our regular customers.
Okay. That's good from an ongoing customer experience, though, when you look for it throughout the entire life of the vehicle and the relationship you need with the customer. So
I think so. I think as well, because it's much, I mean, whilst EV customers, I alluded to it, are very well educated and very savvy about the products and the chemistry and the technology behind it, they're still aware that at the moment they're making very much a leading edge choice. So actually having a conversation with somebody rather than just doing all of your research remotely and being able to talk to somebody about various, how, where that sits from a, any government support you could get, I probably certainly want to talk to somebody about wall box installation, understanding different tariffs. There's so much, car purchases are complicated at the best of times. There's a lot more to consider. So certainly from our side, we welcome that, and we think it's an integral part of our customer journey to make sure that they interact with a well-informed salesperson in one of our retail outlets.
Thank you. I'll come on to you in a minute. We touched on the charging network and we looked at the energy providers. Would you see a customer making the decision that he wants to buy a Jaguar?
I bought one.
Yeah, you did. That's good. So you've got at least 3 or 4 cars at the top. And I've got one as well. So we're very much supporting the UK. So
yeah, so I bought it online. At the very beginning when they were not available. But yes.
Do we extend though? Sorry, I'll sort of. Is there an opportunity to extend the opportunity to purchase by including the energy provider? So, for example, I'll use E.ON for want of better. Yeah, E.ON actually buys the vehicle directly from Jaguar Land Rover and leases as part of their utility bill or monthly commitment the actual vehicle. Is that something that might happen?
I would say that what we have seen in this industry of indeed the swap of the roles between the different players, that's definitely something that can happen. We see companies like, the oil and gas saying we want to be large energy retailers. We see energy retailers wanting to be, large, full energy fuel stations. And we see OEMs also entering to that is to provide further services than just a car. I think in the past, the car was definitely the car experience, the driving experience. Nowadays, it's much more than that. When we connect to parking services, toll roads, energy, so for charging. So I think every sector is mutating and indeed mutating to areas that were not their normal ones and entering into the space of others. So the same way as we saw others entering to the utilities, I wouldn't see that's surprising that the utilities would enter on that, counting that the charging for a vehicle, it's one of the important factors. The enablement of where to charge, how can I make use of my energy? And funny that you touch on the E.ON. A few years back on an exhibition with them, they were saying, if you put a solar panel at your home in Munich, and then you charge in Hamburg, you can charge with the energy that you are producing at home and you don't pay anything. So, and how is that possible? Because we have an energy cloud. So we mentioned PVL presentation, that is, how do we produce energy? And the energy doesn't flow maybe those few thousand kilometers, but at the end, we produce it in one corner and provide someone there, and someone else is producing in the other corner and it's providing to us. So I would say that there's space for it. I still haven't seen it in the market. I saw, other joint partnerships like utilities and leasing companies to create partnerships to provide, car leasing options, car renting and leasing options with embedded charging, all in the same monthly package. I still haven't seen that other side, that is, you can buy your car and the renting to my energy contract of your home, your company. But definitely something.
What's your view, Matthias? It's a bad example, really, though, putting a Jaguar Land Rover in that mix, because it's more likely to be a Leaf or a different type of car. But what's your thoughts?
I'm quite a conservative guy. I do think when companies try to get into other business, they think it's an easy business and easy money to make. I do think leasing companies are quite successful because they know their business. I do think energy companies are quite successful when they know their business. And when one of these companies doesn't make enough money and think then, oh, I go now into the other business, I fear about real challenges. Stick to your guts, learn concentrate where you're good in and do it. I drive as well a Jaguar. I can tell my counterpart, but it's a 13-year-old diesel. I'm very happy with it, by the way. It really runs. It really runs, and it needs 6 to 7 liters, and it's 13 years old, as I said, and it has 200,000 kilometers on the clock, so it really paid its duty. Why do we have so many cards to fill up batteries? Why can't we use just a credit card? I don't get it. Why can't we just use our credit card? It's all, in the end of the day, it's all money. And I'm personally, I love to say it, I buy cars, I don't lease them. I'm a buyer. And my son, by the way, just learns driving. He wanted to have a manual, just to say that as well. I know the next generation doesn't need it anymore, but there's as well one thing we should not forget: fun to drive. Yeah. I love driving. A lot of people love to drive as well, and it still should be fun.
Yeah, I would add just maybe a comment to that question of why do we need so many cards. I think it comes a bit from the experience on the supermarket industry, that you get that loyalty advantages. So I think some of these networks have been created, and so the being advanced in the market to get their space in the market, they tried by having their own card to create a kind of a loyalty plan to secure then the customer adoption versus the adoption towards others. So
when you're a real user of this, this is a sign for me of an industry which is still in their baby shoes.
No, clearly
not ready to do it. I do think you can have a loyalty card. Wonderful. I have a Tesco card. I still have to pay with my credit card. Sorry. Yeah, I can go now to Tesco and say, use my loyalty card.
Yeah, I totally agree with Matthias. I think from a customer value perspective, the experience of doing your weekly shop in Tesco's or Sainsbury's every week and getting your loyalty points is quite different to the energy provider. And actually, I think you're absolutely right. It's a sign of a kind of, it's a little bit like the Wild West, isn't it? All things are popping up. It's not, the government isn't driving a particularly clear agenda, which I think we'd all appreciate as OEMs, so we can get greater consistency, greater ease of payment, the technology being applicable. I think it's got the hallmarks of that rather than any particularly insightful marketing strategy from my perspective.
And please, Jaguar Land Rover, stick to your guts what you have, because I see so many companies who think the other side of the fence, it's so much greener, let's go into new business. And then afterwards, a lot of companies will have trouble. I think we should really concentrate where we are good in. I think this is my attitude, my personal. Don't sue me for it.
No, I think partnering is important here. So offering a full package. So being able to say to a customer, here's the car, here's the wall box, here's an energy provider. I think but even that service, actually, to provide an energy provider that meets the customer's requirements where their tariff is cheaper than they currently have. And I mean, we don't offer it today. We want to offer it, but it's not straightforward, which I guess is really your point about stick to the knitting. I think from our side, I think you're right. You need to understand what your core competence is, but still explore things that are in the realms of genuinely valuable to the customer. And I think a package for something like that might be, which is why we're still searching for that. But but it's not straightforward.
Yeah. So we got the question, right? We got the question to the panel. Can I pick it up, Peter?
You certainly can. I was just
James O'Neill
to try to, but I'm going to, if you don't mind, delegate you to head of questions, because you picked it up quicker than me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So thank you, James O'Neill, for your question. So we got the question, can I ask the panel thoughts on customer preference? Assuming currently cannot have both standard templates. To my side and to my experience, because involving on the minimum charging time, we do see a large progress. 8 years ago, 10 years ago, the cars had batteries of 25 kilowatt hours, capable of doing approximately 150 kilometers, and the charging capability of 50 kilowatts. So over the last years, there was a clear, technology development on the battery side, because that was the majority of the bottleneck into achieving both, and we see the batteries becoming more compact, more dense, more capable of storing energy for the same weight and dimension. So the technology has progressed quite substantially compared to the previous other 30 years. So in the last 6 years, it has been impressive the amount of technology development on how much range can be stored or capacity stored in a battery. On the charging, the same thing, then there's technologies being developed. So Tritium has developed up to 450 kilowatt hour charging, trying to go to the limits of what would be the plug charging. And so I would say that the standards today, the batteries are coming at 60 kilowatt hour. And so giving range of 400 kilometers, and charging is becoming standard around 150 kilowatt hour. So there's a clear progress. From even 2 years ago to today, the industry has progressed substantially to increase the size of the battery, the capacity of the battery, including the maximum range, the charging time. Rawdon, you can tell more than me, but it is increasing over time. It's tough technology-wise to get there, but it is improving and increasing, and we see the averages at 150.
But it's increasing in importance. I mean, my answer, that's a great question actually from James. I think if I think back to all of our planning on the I-Pace, I think we were absolutely obsessed by range anxiety, but not by charging anxiety. I think literally probably 6 months into, or less than that, actually having the product in the market and really understanding where customers were, I think, once you get beyond a certain range, then actually I think this charging speed is just as important as the range. So yeah, and I think as that range normalizes, it will become the bit where products are able to differentiate each other, because it's all about convenience at the end of the day.
I agree.
And I think there's one point as well. Some people might think the electric vehicle from today will be the electric vehicle in 5 years' time. There's still a lot of engineering to be done. It's not finished project yet. And I do think we can still do significant improvements, but please don't expect as well the dream world in a week. Yeah, it will take a longer time than we think. And I do think the developments we do will affect us in other areas as well than we think currently. My message as well is the electric car will not save us from CO2 emissions. It's not the weapon that takes it all away and solves all the problem of mankind. Well, yeah, we have to see that we work on different areas as well.
Yeah, if you look at UK CO2 emissions, they were going down year on year on year, and they've gone up for the last 2 years, and we've sold more electric cars in that period.
Yeah,
it's actually more about diesel demonization than it is about anything else.
Yeah, and I do think we have to work on all areas.
But that's
another topic.
That's a whole nother webinar for a discussion.
Yeah. But I do think as well we all of us have to make clear as well to the politicians that the electric car is not the weapon for everything. And
I think you're right, Matthias, but I think the other point, and it was interesting in the last week or so in the UK, some very negative publicity around PHEVs. I think it was Greenpeace on this particular instance, with a lot of media coverage. And we need to be really careful we don't demonize PHEVs, because I guess there's an argument to say, if you buy a PHEV and don't charge it, then okay, it's probably worse than an ICE engine, but why would you buy a PHEV and not charge it? I mean, we get data from our vehicles, so we know the frequency with which they're being charged. People buy our PHEVs and they use them, daily, if not weekly. They're being charged all the time.
And we can as well say, when you have a full electric vehicle with 400 miles and you use it only daily on 20 miles, that's not a good use either.
Yeah.
I think that comes a lot on incentives over PHEVs, promote them, that you buy them just for the incentive and not for the use of the electric. Yeah, so I'm sometimes reluctant to the incentives to some of the cars, because they promote you to choose the car by a different reason, not to use it electric. So the ones I saw not charging are the ones that, this gave me the direct saving on the purchase, on the taxes, and so on. Those that buy for the reason that indeed, okay, they have a different type of driving, a weekly that they can run electric, but more, weekend or from time to time a longer distance, then yes, they all try to use as best as possible always electric. And I fully agree with you. I think sometimes the governments, by their incentive, change the decision factor, and then yes, then we have those cases that are pointed. That is, some that buy and never charge it, and indeed we have seen some cases like that.
I think as well, this coronavirus, all of us sitting at home, we thought a little bit more, and there is to follow a technology in lots of areas. I still defend combustion engines, fuel cells, and batteries. We have to use it all to the best.
Yeah, fully support that.
So it's really finding the right solution in whichever method we use for the customer, and hopefully the infrastructure staying in tune with the technology that's going into the vehicle.
Right.
Because I see that there's no one without the other, quite frankly.
To our side, I see the infrastructure has been pushed, of course, by the industry. It's at this stage a bit more advanced, right? Like I said, 350 kilowatts. We are supporting Ionity. We deliver to them 900 chargers of this kind, 350 kilowatts. So, but the cars are still getting there. So I think at this point in time, the infrastructure has at least managed to get there. Maybe not yet at the right cost, and that comes over volume. Of course, for us, like any other industry, right, we will reach the optimum point once we grow to a certain volume. But technology-wise, at 350 kilowatt, at least for passenger vehicles and so on, more sufficient. Like I said, we managed to go to 450 kilowatts, still a normal plugging in, allowing other semi-heavy and heavy vehicles to take advantage. The battery side, and it's a technology that indeed it's about, like I sometimes say, my laptop only goes 6 hours. I go a full day and I cannot plug. My phone, I sometimes charge it in the middle of the full battery. Overall technology that needs to keep growing towards is our day-to-day now type of style and lifestyle, right? Not just cars.
Could I come back to Rawdon a second? Just listening, it's fascinating, but the one thing I try to sit here as a potential EV purchaser. How many kilowatts per hour that is going into the car or whatever actually is straight over the head of most people who are looking to purchase an EV for the first time. Why aren't we saying, okay, well, if you're charging this type of charger and you're on there for an hour, you will most probably get X amount of range extra, not the charging speed or the other part, or, we've had it, I've said this a number of times this week, so Ali is probably never going to speak to me again, but we had an e-tron, which was a fabulous car. Yeah, it really was beautiful. It was smooth. It was quiet. It ticked all the boxes. We had no charging infrastructure to be able to use, so we used on street. Yeah, we went on street and we had at least an hour and a half. And we went back, and the guy that was going to take it for the weekend, he said, it's increased by 12 miles. Yeah, it's an hour and a half. I don't want to use it this weekend. I can't go out in it. I don't have it. Do every time I've got 12 miles, I have to sit and wait another hour and a half. So to me, it's the educational part of the speed of a charger in terms of what it will give. If you fill up at the fuel tank and you're doing whatever range, half a tank is going to get you to wherever it is. How do we overcome that uncertainty for people to get them more involved in taking the EV on board?
I think that's for me where, if you go back to your earlier question about people just buying online, or are they utilizing the expertise that's in the retail network, and that's where, for example, the retail network comes to the fore, because we've got people, I guess, like myself, who've lived with an I-Pace. I know how long. I know what mileage I get based on my duty cycle. I know how long it takes to to fill up from my home wall box. I've not got a super fast charger, just got a regular one. I know how quickly it charges in either fast or regular public charging, and that's the advice you'd get from. I'm sure you get the same advice in Audi and soon to be in Mercedes, where actually people are able to just educate you and say, well, this is how long it takes. Similarly, there are apps. So we have an iPace app which you download on your phone. It looks at actually the type of miles that you're doing, where you're going, and actually whether there's charging in that, areas. It can give you some advice as to whether an electric car is well suited to your duty cycle or not. But I think it's very difficult to replace that human interface that says, this is what, if you do this, this is what you will get, in my experience. And I think that's where people come to the fore. So, which is why I think, again, for us, the retail point is a key part of the purchase process, and will be for some time. Even as charging gets faster, the question will just become about, well, how quickly can you do it? The question doesn't go.
No.
Yeah, but it is as well not too complicated to tell the people through a nice display, you have that car, this 5 minutes brings you a mile or something. It's just a way of communication. The major problem will be when you want to have that at home, have fun with your neighbors because the network isn't strong enough. It sounds quite nice for 150 megawatts or kilowatts, and then calculate it, you have 10 things. You need a really good network to make that work.
So
but I think the home charging for me is less of an issue, because when you're at home, I know
when you're home, you're asleep.
You're home. I know, I get back at 8 o'clock. I know I'm not going to be leaving until 6. I've got 10 hours, and actually I know I can do pretty much what I need to do, irrespective of what's happening in the network. The question is more in the public charging there, I think.
Yep.
Oh, I definitely think that also the range anxiety and all that comes from not trying it out. I feel that those that try the car and understand its limits, independently of which EV they are using, they definitely, get very fast used to it. They plan better their journey, and they even make it more efficient by stopping here and working a little bit and continue and so on. But it's a bit of a myth of those that yet haven't tried it. Once you tried it, you get used to it, understand your capabilities, and then you can work. And indeed, the infrastructure is fundamental, but it's growing a lot. Per year, the thousands of chargers that are being installed. It's definitely something.
Now, it'll be different in the volume segments, but in the premium segments, what you also find is the EVs are not the only vehicle in the household, which again puts another very different dimension on how the car is used and how the car is enjoyed. And then going back to Matthias's point, the joy of driving, we all know that EVs are fantastic at the joy of driving. It becomes a slightly different proposition. Yes. If you've got another vehicle that's going to take you to Cornwall and back, well, you don't need to worry about public charging infrastructure. So I think, but that's perhaps a dimension that's specific to the premium market, more to the volume market, I suspect.
Yeah. We've actually virtually out of time. Thank you. It's gone very, very quickly. Is there a takeaway that each of you would like to give someone regarding how we all work together to achieve what the customer wants and how they want it?
Okay, I'll go first. It's that I think aggregation of public charging. Just you make it 1 point, 1 card, whatever, multiple points would significantly reduce hurdles for customers. That would be on my Christmas card list for Manuel.
I would say we are at the start of the journey, not at the end. It won't be over next year. Get ready that we find as well solutions for the next 10 to 15 years, and not only think what can we have in 20. We have to do now.
From my side, I think it's all about experimenting, trying it out. I think people are too afraid of things that never happen on their life or happens once a year. So we should make it by our day-to-day and not by the once a year that I want to make 1,000 kilometers. I think if we really look deep to our day-to-day, we almost 90% of the population could change to a more, sustainable mobility. And that might mean even public transports, bicycles, and not just electric cars. So I think we are too comfortable within the way that we do, that we did. And I think it's all about us maybe just getting a little bit out of the comfort zone and see how can I, change my habits to then have a better experience at the end.
Well, in actual fact, Rawdon, given your sort of pivotal product, as the sort of car using over a shorter period and having the ability to change from one to the other, would actually, for anyone on a 3-month basis, really give a lot of confidence on your ability to use it, or then if it isn't right, then you flip back to a diesel. So I think all of those different systems will enhance the, what's the word I'm looking for, the security of mind on what you're going to buy, especially if you're looking at Matthias's sort of 13 years for a car, then you're stuck with it for a long time if you didn't need it. But that makes sense. Thanks, everybody, and really appreciate it, and hope you've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this session, and we hope to see you again, and I'm really hoping at some stage we will get together again, actually in person rather than just within screen and technology.
One day.
Okay.
One day.
One day.
Take care. Thank you
Cheers.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.